Hi, my name is Chris Aviles. I am a teacher in Fairhaven, New Jersey. I work at Knollwood Middle School, where I run a makerspace and real businesses with my students. Before I got this job, though, I was a high school English teacher, and I taught a really tough group of kids. But I noticed that my relationships, my conversations with my students really centered a lot around video games. And so, to better engage and motivate my students, I came up with a way to integrate everything that they love about video games into class. I created a system of gamification, and that's what I want to share with you today is an overview of kind of how it works. I'll go ahead and start up the presentation. You can see the bit.ly down there if you want to get a copy of this presentation. And I usually do this talk in three different stages, right? Stage one is motivating the player. Stage two is leveling up instructional design, where we talk about how to actually turn your lessons and units into video game style levels of learning. And then stage three, the classroom as an experience, we talk about bringing in opportunities and different kind of things that you can do to actually make your class come to life as an experience. And so I use things like alternate reality games and some of that fun stuff to do that. But those are the three stages. And like I said, I just want to kind of go over gamification in general with you so you guys could get an idea. And so when we think about gamification, right, a lot of people may think of these two games. They're probably still the best games ever in education. I can remember playing Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and racing to get my work done to play the Oregon Trail. And I was a bit of a troublemaker when I was a kid, so I think I'm one of the only kids to ever get detention for playing the Oregon Trail. I would name the characters after teachers, and obviously none of them made it to Oregon. I guess they didn't think that was too funny. But this is not actually what gamification is. Gamification is not using or assessing video games in the classroom. That's called game-based learning. And so while I do a lot of game-based learning, I use Minecraft and City Skylines and a bunch of different games to actually teach and assess lessons. That's not what gamification is. Gamification is taking the game mechanics everybody loves about video games and applying them to the classroom. And this is great because you could do this with no tech, low tech. You don't even ever have to have played a video game in your life to be able to gamify. What we're going to do is we're going to take the video game mechanics that makes video games so motivating and engaging to play, and we're going to apply that to our classroom. And so a reason that we should really care about this stuff is video games are unbelievably popular right now. 49 out of 51 million students game at least an hour a day. 21 million game more than 3 hours per week. 99% of boys and 94% of girls under 18 play video games. Believe it or not, from 26 to 35, that age demographic, more girls play video games than boys. So it's an absolute myth that girls don't play video games. They generally play different types of video games than boys, right? Boys tend to play more first-person shooters. Girls tend to play more role-playing games, or even games like Candy Crush or Soda Crush, that kind of stuff. But what girls are less likely to do is describe themselves as gamers. But it is an absolute myth that girls don't play video games. And these next two facts about video games are really why I got into gamification and created this system. And that is because children from lower income families game more than their more affluent counterparts. And then on average, black students game 30 minutes more per day than white students, and Hispanics game 10 minutes more per day than white students. Those, when I was teaching high school English, those were the kids, that was my demographic. And so to be able to bring something that they cared about into the classroom was important because, believe it or not, even your poorest students likely have video game systems because it's some of the cheapest entertainment that you can buy. When it takes, when it costs almost $100 to take a family of four out to dinner and a movie, getting a video game system is a great way to just have entertainment in the house and not necessarily have to pay for it all the time. And then one of the other interesting facts is that your average student will rack up 10,000 hours of gaming by the time they're 21. So it's almost like this is their part-time job. And so what I love about games is regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, income, sexuality, intelligence, religion, locations, age, or disability, right, students are gaming. One of my favorite things to bring up or share is that our LGBT students are some of our biggest gamers, and that's because they can log into a game. They could choose to be the gender they want. They could choose to dress and style themselves the way that they want. But in basically every video game that kids play, there is a guild or a group of people that play together, and they're called Our Sanctuary. And this is an LGBT-friendly group, so not only can they style themselves the way that they feel comfortable, but when they log into the game, and this is a huge international guild of people who play together, they can go and join and be with, people who understand and accept them. So it was really interesting. One of the things I noticed is when I started gamifying 6 years ago, a lot of my students wound up coming out to me, and I guess we would talk about it because I think I created a safe place through gamification, just like they play video games at home because it's a safe place for them to be who they want to be. So I think video games are a way that we can really tap in to a diverse array of students, and I think that's part of the beauty of gamification. And another reason this is so great is that kids are solving problems, right? They're being heroes, they're learning there's good in the world worth fighting for, and they're engaged and motivated. When a kid goes home and plays video games, they are the chosen one. They get all the spells, they get all the powers, they are the only one that can save the world. But when they're in school, they have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. So you can see the dynamic, between the world that we create at school and the world that the video game creates. So I think it's really important that we take these game mechanics from video games because ultimately, video games are fair. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can take away and work into our classroom is that video games are fair. It doesn't care if we're black or white, gay or straight, rich or poor, Christian, Jewish, Muslim. The game treats every single person the same. And so obviously that sounds like a great way to run your classroom. So a lot of these game mechanics that we're going to insert into the classroom are ultimately going to make your classroom a more fair place to be. It's going to give students a little bit more autonomy, have some voice and choice in what they do. And again, I really do believe that video games and games mechanics are a great analog for what a classroom should look like. And if that hasn't convinced you, I'll talk about these. I won't necessarily show you. If you want to download the presentation, you'll find the links to these video games. But gaming is taking on a totally new video games are taking on a totally new video games are coming to a new era, and that era is virtual reality and maybe even more excitedly augmented reality. And so this game is called Night Terrors, and you take your phone, you download the game, you plug in your headphones, and it actually turns your house into a haunted house, and it's really pretty cool. So you can check out that video. Here's another one. This one kind of scares me. I'll show you a little bit of this one. And so what's crazy about this game is you basically strap a gun barrel and a grip onto your phone, and you go outside and you play this real-life first-person shooter called Father.io. And as you saw, I love to show that part. Somebody at home on their computer can fly a drone and also, play the game as well. On one hand, I think this is a really fun, awesome idea, but on the other hand, it kind of terrifies me. Because I think somebody's going to get shot, and it's probably going to be one of our students of color, just because slapping a gun barrel and a grip on a phone, what are we going to do when kids are playing this, in the school parking lot or in the hallways? And so by understanding that games are going to get more popular, the line between reality and video gaming is starting to blend. You probably have seen it where you live, where, I know last summer I almost ran over 10 kids who were playing Pokemon Go, and if it hasn't hit your town yet, Harry Potter Go basically has just come out. So there's like, you know, a new version of that. So these games are no longer, you know, you're not tethered to the console, you're not tethered to your seat and the controller anymore. These games are starting to make their way into real life. And so I always have believed that we should take what students are passionate about and we should bring it into our classroom. And so the idea that, you know, kids love video games, let's try to make our classroom, you know, let's take the best part of it and try to make our classroom more like a video game. And you can see here, you know, I started pulling data. This is about 3 years old, but over the course of 3 years, I took my pre-gamification grades of my students and I took my post-gamification grades of my students. And you can see that, you know, after I gamified class, students started to do a lot better. Especially, again, my students of color. But I think the big thing to understand here, though, is gamification in and of itself is not going to make your kids smarter. What we hope to do is we hope to motivate them, engage them, and through that, you know, they'll learn more and then perform better. So it's not necessarily gamification that makes students smarter. This is just, you know, I want you to understand this is just a technique or a tool that you can have in your toolbox for engaging, motivating, and getting kids excited to learn. So please don't think that gamification is a silver bullet. Gamification in reality is just another way to motivate and engage students, and hopefully they perform better because they're paying attention. You know, and I took polls like this every year for years, just because when we talk about games and gamification, you know, there seems to be this unfortunate aura around games that, you know, they're a waste of time, you don't learn anything, they're not, you know, they're good for nothing. And really that couldn't be farther from the truth. There's lots of research and studies that show the benefits of video games. I know when I was younger, one of my favorite games was a game called Final Fantasy VII. And, you know, that video game did not have any spoken words for characters. You had to read everything on the screen. And I still today believe that there is a correlation between the fact that, you know, I played that video game a lot and I had to do a lot of reading, and I also really scored well, you know, on all my English tests, and I became an English teacher. And so, you know, I think there's something to be said there around the idea that video games do have a lot of educational value. Game mechanics have a lot of educational value. And as you can see every year, my students, right, they learned a lot in my school, in my classroom, excuse me, and they rather learn in a gamified class instead of a traditional class. And, you know, anywhere between 85 and 95% was what I always got on these types of polls, is they really just enjoyed the class. It was a lot more fun. It was a lot more engaging. The culture itself kind of changed to be a little bit, you know, kids were excited and happy, and everyone was always smiling and laughing, and we were always having a good time. And I think in large part, you know, gamification helps, you know, develop relationships and improve class culture as well. So what game mechanics are we going to use? Wonderful. So like I said, this is just going to be an overview of the first part of how gamification works, but let's jump into it. You know, what's important to see here in this slide is the fact that we teach 4 different types of students: gladiators, achievers, socializers, and explorers. Gladiators are called the multiplayer type of kids, and they're extrinsically motivated. They love to win, they love ranks, they love competition, they love messing with other people. We can engage them by using leaderboards and levels, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But on the other side, we have extrinsically motivated single player type of kids. These are our achievers, right? They love concrete measurements of success. These are kids that, you know, if they don't get A's, they really are upset. And so, you know, your gladiators and achievers, that's who school is made for, right? These are students that are motivated by the extrinsic part of school, the grades, the people, when in reality, right, there's a whole other group of people, 2 other groups of people we need to worry about. Number one is the socializers. They're multiplayer kids that are intrinsically motivated. And those are the kids that know your name, know your husband and wife's name, knows your dog's name. They invite you to the quinceañeras, and they, know when your birthday is, and they ask how your weekend is because they actually really are into, they care. And so they love to interact with class, they love to interact with their classmates. They love group work. They love drama. They love helping. And then on the other side of that, you have intrinsically motivated single-player students called explorers. They love to drive and discover and create, and really the best way I can describe them are those like your Minecraft type of kids where, you know, they'll build something and then knock it down and rebuild it just because they think they can make it better, right? These are the kids that want to see what happens. They want to just experiment with things, and they always, you know, these kids generally, they don't like group work, and their projects are a little, you know, out in left field because they're doing something fun, or they're, you know, they just wanted to do something weird. So understanding that these are the 4 types of kids that we teach. And it's really nice because this also lines up with Richard Bartle's test of what types of people play video games. You know, so we could see the people drawn to video games and how they play video games also reflected in the students that we teach. And so the other thing is also understanding what motivates people. Status, access, power, and stuff. And that's in order of most motivating to least motivating, right? Status being, you know, obviously as teachers, we don't get the status that we deserve. You know, we're treated like babysitters. And so status is giving somebody the respect that they deserve. Status is making somebody feel special. Access is the ability to have something that other people can't. Power is having control over yourself or others, and then stuff is just stuff. Pizza parties, pencils, pens, that stuff. And so my gamification system focuses on status, access, and power. I try not to use stuff. I basically don't use any stuff as a reward. But understand, if you have a point system, if you use Class Dojo, if you have a prize bucket that your students go to at the end of the week, you're using gamification, but you're only using it to control behavior. You're not using it to overall improve the classroom. So we're going to stay away from stuff. We're going to focus on status, access, and power. And so what we're going to do, number 1, is we're going to give our class epic meaning. If you do nothing else, if you don't know where to start with this, because by and far this game mechanic, or I should say these 2 game mechanics, are the most popular. These are the ones that make the biggest difference, and so here's what they are. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to move to an XP grading system, and what that means is we're going to go to total points grading. Let's say we have 4 tests, they're 100 points each, and a kid gets, you know, hundreds on all of them. He's earned 400 out of 400, right? So total points being points possible divided by points earned gives you their grade. And the reason we do this is when you play a video game, you don't start at level 100 and get weaker as the game goes on. You start at level 0, and everything you do makes you more successful, makes you more powerful, and you level up. School, for some reason, you know, and I even used to do this before I started gamifying. I would say to the class, okay, everybody in here has 100. All you have to do is keep it. And we know that's not possible, right? So the current grading system we use is a system where failure is the only option. I consistently start at 100 and I go worse. I get worse. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start students at 0. We're going to let them know they're starting at 0. And every single thing that students do is going to give them points, is going to level them up. You know, and success breeds success. So the idea of starting kids at a 0, and let's say I have 2 tests and 2 quizzes, all worth 400 points, and I get 350 out of the 400 points. You divide that, that's my grade. But I also can't lose it, right? Everything I do, start at the bottom, I'm working up. And so, number 1, I have never worked with a teacher, and I've never used a grade book that does not allow some way to do total points grading. So, you know, dive into it, look around into your grade book, figure out how you can do it. Total points grading is such a great way to go. And then the next part, what we're going to do with that total point grading, like I said, we're going to make it a little bit more epic. I never say points. Kids earn XP in my class, so I never say a 100-point test. I'd say you can earn 100 XP, right? XP stands for experience points. That's generally what you earn when you play video games. And, you know, I don't call tests, I call them epic quests, heroic quests, side quests, or homework. The idea being that, you know, as an English teacher, you will never convince me that words don't matter, right? Words matter. And I've done this, like I said, with 10th, 11th, 12th graders. Now working with 4th through 8th grade, I've done it with them. Nobody ever got mad that I was talking about experience points, and nobody ever got mad that I said you guys have an epic, you know, epic quest coming up. Because the idea is, you know, tests are something to be afraid of, especially if you give, you know, like a spelling test every Friday, right? That kid who can't spell is terrified of Fridays. But when you call it an epic quest or an adventure, you know, it's something to be conquered. It's something to, you know, look forward to taking on, because, you know, words matter. And you know, I would even poll kids, and they liked the idea of not calling it tests and not calling it homework. So after you go to total points grading and kids level up, that second part, what we're talking about here is put a theme. Put a theme to your class. I use the theme of video games, right? I say epic quests, I say experience points. You know, I'm comfortable with that. I play a lot of video games, so I could talk that language. But if you can't, right, pick a theme that you're comfortable with. I've worked with a lot of teachers, you know, and they... I had a history teacher who kids earned merits and they went on secret missions. I had a science teacher that kids started as amoebas and they worked their way up to apex predators. And so find a theme. If you're not comfortable with using video games as your theme, you can still gamify by making a theme you are comfortable with. So, you know, steal what I have. You know, if you download the presentation, you'll see it all laid out for you. If you want to copy exactly what I do, I absolutely go for it. But put your own theme on your class if you don't feel comfortable using, you know, the theme of gaming, you know, the jargon of gaming. So, mechanic 1, we are going to go to total points grading. I call it XP grading, right? We're starting at 0, we're going up. Mechanic number 2, we're going to put a theme over top of our classroom. What is the theme of your class? What is the story of your class? You know, how are you going to talk about, you know, things in class like homework and tests and points and all that good stuff, right? So mechanic 1, starting at 0 with total points grading. Mechanic 2, we are leveling, we are putting a theme. I'm going to kind of go quick with these last couple of things because, like I said, if you do nothing else, if you don't know where to start, total points grading and a theme are what you want to do, and then you can come back as you get better, as you level up with gamification. You can come back because the third mechanic that we're going to use are leaderboards. Leaderboards are going to appeal to your gladiators. They're going to appeal to your achievers. And because we're starting students at 0 with total points grading, it makes it really easy to create a leaderboard. And so what you can see here, I have kids create a learner tag, right? Something that they would have at home with their gamer tag on the systems that they sign up for. And that's because I did some work with UPenn, and you know, we found out that an anonymous leaderboard isn't motivating. A leaderboard with a student's real name on it isn't motivating and also tells everybody their grade. But a pseudonymous leaderboard, one where they can make up their own names and nobody knows who they are unless they tell somebody, that seems to be quite engaging. And so what's funny too is you can see here, Katrina DeGusto, you know, she used her real name, and every year I have kids do this, and I have to go up. I say, hey, you know, did you know you put your real name as your learner tag? And every year, you know, and especially I remember the story about Katrina, she said, yeah. I said, you know, how come? And she goes, I want everybody to know who's kicking their ass. And so, you know, you can see that warrior spirit, that gladiator spirit in some of your students, you know, because they'll do that. You know, there's always a handful that do it every year, and I love that. And so you can see here it tracks their experience points. And then what we want to do as well is, you know, anybody can make a leaderboard, and leaderboards only reward kids who do well in school, so we added some extra stuff to our leaderboard. So what we're trying to do, right, is get everybody an epic win. Not only do students compete on the leaderboard, earn experience points, what they get from doing their work and their good grades and stuff like that, they could do that individually, but I also group them up. I group them up as a class, and then I also group them up as a guild, right? Teams of 2 or 3. And so now, even if the kid's not the smartest in the class, they can get an epic win as part of their team. They could get an epic win as part of their class. And, you know, I find that has been more motivating. My homework, you know, submission rate went up through the roof because there's that positive peer pressure of, you know, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're going to cost us experience points. And all that good stuff. And so the students can, you know, check on the spreadsheet where they fall in the competition. And I'll tell you where you can get the spreadsheet in a little bit. But another great example, right, putting them into teams, this was Nick. And for Christmas, Nick got a jersey made, he and his team. They called themselves the Optic Guild. And so what they would do is when they had presentations, they would all start to wear these jerseys. And so now they started to look like a team. And it was funny is because then things started to escalate. All I did was group kids up into guilds, into teams, and now all of a sudden they started to dress. They started to, entrance music became a thing where I'd have to play a song, as they walked up to the board or walked into the room. And they had flags and banners. And so it really got to be a lot of fun seeing kids kind of take this idea and run with it. And so, I guess this mechanic, I call it shared experience. Anytime you can create a shared experience, do so for your kids, and I like to use the analogy of like sports. I've wrestled and played football my whole life, and practice sucks. Nobody likes going to practice, right? You do it for the games and you do it for your friends, but when we have to suffer and do something, if we could do it together, it generally becomes more enjoyable. And so create that shared experience by grouping your kids together, making a class versus class competition, a guild versus guild competition. And so you saw as well on that leaderboard there's a level. And so you can see here students also earn level on top of experience points, and levels are derived from AP points. And so what that is, right, we said that the leaderboard appeals to the leaderboard appeals to your gladiators and your achievers. Well, we talked about also, what about your socializers and your explorers, right? AP is achievement points. That's my class currency. So students earn XP when they, do their work, basically. Students earn AP when they do, I call it displaying a heroic trait, or they do a heroic deed. The big thing to know here is if you have a class currency, it should not be tied to work at all. And so you'll see my AP, right? Really, it solves problems for me and makes my students' lives easier. And so what we do is we reward actions and traits that we want to see more of, right? So real behaviorism here stuff. Well, yeah, you get it. So here's just a couple quick examples. When I was teaching high school, it was really hard to get parents to come to back to school night. And so if they got their parents to come, they earned the Family Matters achievement worth 10 AP points. If the entire class completed their side quest, which is homework, everybody in class got 50 AP points, right? They got the Unity achievement. So it's important to understand that we don't want to give AP for things based on work, but we can use it to get them to do better work. So for example, I had in Fuego. If a student got A's on their last 3 epic quests, they got an achievement, right? So I'm not rewarding the work, I'm rewarding the continuation of, doing well. And so, I think 3 A's in a row was 50 AP, 3 B's in a row was 25, 3 C's was 10. And so being consistent, right, is what this achievement was about. And we have early bird. You handed in your essay at least 24 hours early, project work, whatever it may be, right? It's always nice to have students not wait to the last minute, and that's how I got them to start working a little bit before the night before, was using this achievement. I'll give you another example. I had an achievement called Taken, and it had a picture of Liam Neeson on it, and it said on it, I have a certain set of skills. And so the Taken achievement was how I rewarded helping. See, we have to understand is, if we are trying to create a fair gamification system, we have to make sure what we are rewarding is concrete. Helping is not concrete, right? Somebody helps for 5 minutes, they give an achievement. Somebody helped for 20 minutes, they got an achievement. You didn't see that kid over there. You didn't see him helping, but he was helping longer, but he was helping better. Helping isn't concrete, so you can't reward things that aren't concrete because you create an unfair system, right? So you have to be a little bit clever, right? Like, consistency within Fuego, again, is not about the A's, it's about consistently doing well. I had an achievement called Level Up. If they got a B on an epic quest and the next time they got an A on an epic quest, they unlocked that achievement again. So improvement, consistency. With Taken and helping, what I would do is, basically if you're asked to help, it's because you are good at something, you have a skill set, which is why with Taken, anytime a student was picked because they had a certain set of skills, I'll give you, for example, I had this wonderful student, she was awesome at movie makeup. right? She devoted all her time to school plays and doing movie makeup and monster makeup, and she wanted to be on that TV show where they make like monster masks and stuff. She was fabulous. There's no way to reward that in school, right? There's no way to celebrate her passion of monster makeup, in school. But when I gave an epic quest to remake an Edgar Allan Poe story, movie, make it a modern movie. I watched this girl sign up every Saturday to go do a different group's movie makeup, right? She was a socializer. She just cared about people. She loved to help people. And so, she spent a month of Saturdays going to people's houses and doing makeup for their movie. And, that's when I needed to reward that, right? So she got the Taken achievement. That we're rewarding students when they show a heroic trait, they complete a heroic deed, they're not tied to work. You can hand these out in a couple different ways. I've used Schoology. They have badges, they call them, already built in. You could do this through Google Classroom. You could give it to a kid using the Give to Individual Student feature. I actually worked with teachers who have no technology, and so what works really well is you make your achievements about the size of baseball cards. You put them in baseball card holders. There's a bunch of different ways. You just need to find which one works best for you to hand out achievements. So what happens after the students earn AP, right? Their AP accumulates like you saw on the leaderboard. And what those AP points translate to, again, is class currency. So these are just a few of the things that I used to charge students for, because we are giving away for free what we should be charging students for. If they want to go to the bathroom, right, I charge them, absolutely. I would feel comfortable using that one, probably 5th grade and up. How many times does a kid come up to you and say, have you graded my stuff yet? Have you graded my stuff yet? Well, if you have 200 AP, I will grade your stuff first if you buy the Me First item. On the leaderboard, Purge, you can steal points from other teams. Slander, you can change a guild's name. That one was actually really popular. Tipping point, how often do we have students who say, I have a 92.3, what do I have to do to get an A? And sometimes we give him extra work, or we just say no, but we want to give it to him because maybe he's worked hard all year. With tipping point, if kids save their AP, right, they can unlock that next level grade. They could get an XP boost on any quest for 10%, so that's kind of like your extra credit, right? But no homework passes, no stuff. These should all solve problems, right? If a kid needs to go to their locker to get something, everything in my class costs AP. And what I love about this is, number one, kids are earning AP because they're just being awesome kids that, so that helps with the behavior, that helps with, engagement. But it also solves problems. So, if a kid forgets, can I hand it in late? Sure, but it'll charge you, 100 AP, and I'll remove the late penalty or something like that. So the better a kid is, the more AP they earn, and then they can buy items that make their life easier and solve problems for us. And so that's kind of how the whole system works. You can see these gamified sites. TechDevTeacher.com is my blog. Where you can go, I'll show you real quick if you jump on over. I wrote a book about this. You are more than welcome to have it. It's totally free resource for you. It also has the Google Sheet that I use on there. So if you go to TechDevTeacher.com, click on the gamification guide, that'll take you to a link to download the book. So if you liked what you heard, if you're interested, please download the presentation, download the book, reach out to me on Twitter, reach out to me through email, and let's get you started gamifying. Thank you so much.